So to beginning with spiritual abuse involve the injury or mistreatment of the soul and refer to harm done to the deepest and the most intimate aspects of the person's being. This occurs when an individual, such a cult leader, is viewed as a superpower or a godlike figure, and other community members are treated like objects but are manipulated to fulfill the needs of the leader. Herein, the group relationships are characterized by deception and manipulation. The manipulation is often so subtle that those being deceived or not even aware of the harm that is being inflicted on them. They may perceive the situation to be normal rather than abusive. Yeah. So, the consequences of spiritual abuse on those subjected to it are significant. While they are in the midst of the abuse, they are subject to coercive control. They internalize the norms of the group and they lose control over their choices, decisions, and behaviors. They internalize the projected representation the patriarch puts out about them. They internalize feelings of sinfulness, incompetence, and other deficiencies. Once they leave the group, they have difficulty recognizing themselves as victims or survivors because of the deeply entrenched views of themselves as imprint on them by the patriarch. They easily defer to others who exert authority over them, such as over community leaders, such as pastors or psychotherapists. And conversely, they distrust or fear relationships and struggle to gain trust of others. Close patriarchal community to better understand the circumstances these women and girls come from. We will first look at close patriarchal communities in general. Patriarchy is an umbrella term to describe men's systemic dominance of women. Petzman talks specifically about the oppression of women and highlight the type of political power possessed by men solely because of their gender. Patriarchy describes a society or a group wherein women are oppressed and abuse is perpetrated. Misogyny is the means by which patriarchal order is maintained. This occurs by implicating hostile or negative social consequences on a certain class of girls or women to enforce and police social norms that are gendered in theory and in practice. In theory, like content, and in practice, the enforcement of patriarchal norm and mechanism. In patriarchal community like cults or honor-based group, misogyny is used to regulate women's behavior. It's not only enforced by male figures, but also by women who are frequently tasked with ensuring over women conformity to group norms. With my colleagues, Marie-André Pellan, we wrote an article on that or sometimes women are the victim, but they are also the aggressor because they internalize norm and they apply norm to other women. So man described the concept of empathy, which is the excessive sympathy shown toward the male perpetrator of violence or sexual violence. Betrayal trauma theory describes the experience of a victim who is mistreated by a person in a position of power within a group or institution. Betrayal blindness describes the unawareness or forgetfulness experience in the context of betrayal-related trauma. This can be experienced by victims, perpetrators, or witnesses. Psychologically, this phenomenon helps people maintain faith in their relationships, institutions, and social system they depend upon. Coercive control. So coercive control was first academically described as stark. It consists of a series of strategy and action that are gradually put into place by a partner or ex-partner with the aim of isolating, controlling, terrorizing, or depriving the person of their freedom. It is intended to ensure the subordination of women in a conjugal context. In so-called traditional community, women's choices are constrained through the means of coercive control and thus dictated by the husband, the leader, or the whole community. Coercive control enables certain men and groups to force women to satisfy their needs. The gender-based abuse consists of both action and inaction and is intrinsically linked to a person's sex. In the case of spiritual abuse, gender-based abuse is a crucial concept. It can consist of overt deception or more subtle inaction of a family member or the entire community tainted by a community's cultural norms and values. It is an essential concept where spiritual abuse primarily consists of deception and inaction of a family or community. Gender-based abuse deprives victims of the power and control they could have over their lives, while simultaneously increasing that of the abuser. An interesting distinction between gender-based abuse and intimate partner violence is that there can be multiple aggressors in situations with gender-based abuse, and this aggressor can operate beyond the borders of any one country or community. In situation of gender-based abuse, women and girls are often criticized for their passivity by onlookers. It is constantly reinforced by systems that involve gender inequality and vice versa. It should be noted that immigrant women face increased vulnerability because of their cultural background, immigration status, or legal status, which can create additional barriers to seeking help. Our methodology, so for the study I'm describing, we conducted a total of 41 interviews between the years of 2005 and 2020. we interviewed women from close patriarchal community, including 11 interviews with immigrant women forced into marriage, and 30 interviews with women from polygamous culture groups. The women interviewed were recruited through community resource staff and advertisement passed around at organizations who worked with this population. Data analysis was conducted via thematic analysis as per Paye and Mukeli, wherein we systematically identify, grouped, and subsidiarily, discursively examine the themes addressed in a corpus, highlighting the role of women in the socialization process. Oh, excuse me. Systematic analysis makes it possible to identify categories of interaction in the data to apprehend attitudinal form of exchange, enable us to recognize the system of interaction between women and other community members, and to identify the implicit rules that influence their decision and behavior in the community. When analyzing the interviews conducted for this project, the theme illustrated a continuum of abuse experienced by our participants. The continuum starts with more subtle means of abuse, which describe the effect of the spiritual and cultural environment participants lived within. As the continuum progresses, patriarchal action become increasingly apparent. By the fifth level, actions that were described clearly depict sexual violence. So the first level of the continuum of abuse is subtle and describes the effect of the spiritual and cultural environment on study participants. Although it doesn't constitute openly visible or clearly definable abuse, it creates the basis for further violence. Like Brielle, ex-member of a cult group, on a daily basis, we were all under surveillance at school, at home, everywhere. In adolescence, the girls were under more surveillance. There were always investigations going on all the time. Did you adopt this behavior at school or this behavior again? It's like everyone always watching everyone else or seeing if they are doing something wrong all the time. Everyone's always watching everyone else, kids, parents, fathers. Then at the moment, it's one of the moments that traumatized me the most because I was pretty scared. First of all, it was the man who had the fathers who sat me down in a room with the fathers would bring us in to ask us questions about whether we would say this, done that, and then to see whether our stories were going to be similar or not. For Camille was forced into marriage. If I had a boyfriend, which I don't, I wouldn't be able to go to school. I wouldn't be able to leave my house, and they are going to take me to the name of the country of origin to marry another guy. Because of that, I don't want to cause problems at home, and that's why I'm not looking for boyfriends. Since then, as soon as I leave school, I don't talk to anyone. I never know when my father will come. He won't understand. I say a boy is my boyfriend. Since that day, I don't talk to anyone and I go straight home. That's what I'm not. I'm afraid to have a conversation even with my friends. Camille participated to a scholar. They go to the museum with the school, and they were on the boardwalk in the street, and a lot of people were around Camille, and men were around her, and her aunt was in the streets and see Camille with other people and men around her. And it was not, oh, I see Camille with in the visit for the school. It was, oh, I see Camille, she she has not one boyfriend but three. And for that reason, Camille was sequestrated for several weeks in a row. And after that day, Camille was very careful with her behavior, even if she did nothing. Second level, coercive control and family strategy. So the second level of the continuum of abuse describes situations where coercion and family strategy are used to control women's action and choice. Still very insidious, it becomes clear that the personal freedom of women is being limited. So Elodie, who is an immigrant and forced into marriage, at first I wasn't ready for it, but my father asked me, and then I asked him, why do I have to make this sacrifice? And this word sacrifice is very important. And then my father said, no, it's not a sacrifice. It's going to be an honor for you because I'm deciding for you. But I didn't agree with all that. For Lena, so I refused to marry an older man. My father had always said I could refuse any man. Everyone was offended by my choice, my father, my mother, my other mothers. When they realized that I wouldn't change my mind, they sent me to work for a family in another country. After 6 months, my father came to me and asked, do you want to marry him now? I said yes, because my life was already miserable. I couldn't be any worse. I accepted the choice because otherwise I would never be a goddess. So women accepted into paradise in this community. So it's absence of choice for this woman. They don't have the choice. They apparently have the choice, but in fact they don't have the choice. The third level on the continuum of abuse we name learned consent. The concept of consent luring describes the use of deception of women by the family to conceal certain facts, such as drug use, actual marital status, or even a history of violence to gain consent. The dichotomy of the concept of honor alongside the use of deception clearly brings free and informed consent into question. Here are 2 examples of participants describing consent learning. So for Adele, I was 15, 16 years old, and one evening 2 men from the band came to the house in my parents' absence. two members of the band arrived and said to me, Adele, can we talk to you for a minute? And I was like my parent, I went there. Here. Well, they say it won't take long. Then they asked me about my sexual behavior. If would being touched by another member who I've been touched, they were asking me personal question, private question. I was uncomfortable, but I didn't even think about refusing to answer. It was normal to Daphne. It was normal to wait at 17. It was the only way to have sex. I have seen so many people I grew up with, like get married at 70 right now because, if you want to have a right sexual relationship. Yeah, and for Elodie. Elodie and Danae are two immigrant women who were forced into marriage. So for Elodie, he hid many realities. He said he was shopping for jewelry and all that, but that wasn't true ever. I found out that he doesn't do anything all day. He's just on drugs or hanging out with his friends. So he was apparently a very good guy, very good professional situation, and the parents were, oh, why it's a great choice for you. So we make the arrangement to marry him. And after the marriage, they discover Elodie, but also her family discover, in fact, the guys were just a drug dealer. So if the family knew this information, they don't do the marriage. But now the marriage is signed, the papers are signed, and the situation is what it is, and we can do nothing to return. So she was like in a trap. For Danae, nobody knew his date of birth. So he said he was 28, 29, but that wasn't true. He was much older, and it was much older for 10 years. So he was not 28, 29, but almost 40. So it changed. And how you can trust someone who doesn't reveal his real age. So the fourth level, the fourth choice, the fourth level that we found in our analysis describe factors that were shown to force a woman's choice. These items are increasingly straightforward example to overt abuse. So psychological constraints, fear, threat, time pressure, like in case of a woman forced into marriage. Okay, we need to do the marriage right now because the family travel in the origin country, and we just have 15 days. So all must be due in 15 days, and so this time pressure, the fear, if you don't do that, we killed you. So the psychological constraint is very important in that case. Patriarchal honor constraint. forcing her daughter into marriage because it's our value, it's all the instrumentalization of religion. So it's a hole in the patriarchal owner constraint. Spiritual constraints, access to paradise for women who are in cult groups, communication with higher power, migration-related constraints. All the women I met were immigrant women, and an immigration statute in Canada, it's like gold. So for that, the family put a lot of constraints to women. Economic constraints solved by the family, a way for family to pay off debts. It was the case of one of my participants in my study. This girl thought she went to Canada to study, and it was in fact she was sold by her grandmother to pay off debts. And she discovered in Canada she was sold by her grandmother. So it was very, very hard for her because she is in another country. She knows anyone in this country. She didn't speak French or English. So the situation for this girl was very critical. So here's some example of factor that force a woman's choice. For Danae, there is no option as to whether I wanted or not. I had no choice but to say yes. Brielle, well, I met a man in the church when I was 17, and by 18, we were married. Then I don't want to say it was a forced marriage, but it was borderline forced. In the group, you don't have sex until you are married. It's like the biggest no ever. Then my family basically gave me an ultimatum: either you marry him or you take off. They didn't want to keep me. They couldn't keep me because they would never really had any work experience because I hadn't finished high school, because I didn't have any experiences in life in general. I decided to marry him because I didn't know what else I could do. I saw my husband as a savior, if you will. The fifth level on the continuum of abuse we found in our analysis was sexual violence. It describes sex as conjugal duty. Some participants describe female genital mutilation. This level clearly depicts actions that are very clearly violent. So for Brielle, I'm married. I get abused for a couple of years. Then finally, I decide to leave him. It was difficult because church is, first of all, it's a male-dominated church. So the man can do no wrong. Okay, even the marriage discourse at the church, it's like, woman, be submissive to your husband at all time. Give your husband the due, which is which is sex when he wants sex. Then that's it, no question. So sexual violence can also be physical in nature. Women speak of rape, of forced pregnancy. Jade is one of few women to reveal the sexual violence she suffered. She says she tried to resist or avoid sexual relation, but most of the time, this would lead to sexual violence. I don't sleep with him, so my husband. I sleep on the sofa in the living room with my son. He calls me just to have sex. The sex he has with me is just thing I don't accept. It's what he wants. Jade says she tried to resist or avoid sexual relation, but most of the time this led to physical violence. That's when I start doing everything I could to avoid, but it's impossible. When he really to do things to me, he hits me in the face all over my body. These marital rapes can have consequences for women's health, leading in particular to forced pregnancies, as was the case for Jade, who has, when we had my second baby, I was the one who decided. He didn't want to, so I took the pill to avoid getting pregnant. When I ran out of pill, he asked me if I could renew. He said, "Why do you want that?" I want to have kids. I said, this isn't the time. I'm still young. I don't want to. He said, "It's not up to you, it's up to me." He forced me to have a second baby. And in case of Jade, the first pregnancy was very hard for her because the baby was in danger. The delivery was very traumatic for her, and she didn't want the second. She lost a second baby because of the violence by her husband. So to conclude, where spiritual abuse occurs, women and girls see no other choice than to comply and hope for less violence and eventually better social status. Women are dispossessed of all form of power and are pressured into conforming with the community norms. They are also pressured into monitoring others. There is no space for individuality or self-discovery as an individual. Women are strongly pressured to simply adhere to the group norms, relinquishing to the male authority, leaving very little opportunity to develop a personal identity. Add guilt to this, and women are suddenly in a position causing them to allow men to do things to them they wouldn't otherwise have. The notion of spiritual abuse exists because it is imposed by the community, but not necessarily by the religion or culture at the core of the community. The instrumentalization of these values, religion, and norms creates space for spiritual violence and sexual violence. Women experience the whole continuum of gender-based abuse. And with Marie-André, we saw also the institutional betrayal, because institutional betrayal can be seen in the prioritization of conformity to the authority of one or more men in a group. This will often hinder the acknowledgement or comprehension of women's victimization within the community. Even if women recognize their victimization, this understanding is disregarded by others in order to preserve the cohesion of group dynamics and to maintain patriarchal control. And it's the institutional betrayal. It's the case with women in cult groups or forced into marriage, but it's more bigger because maybe in Canada we have a lot of case of sexual violence at university, and in some university apply the silence. So the institution tend to to don't speak about that. And sometimes they just, oh, but we have a politic on sexual violence. Oh, good job. But in fact, the institution do absolutely nothing to help a victim. So this concept of institutional betrayal, we want to work more about that in another research with Marianne. So thank you so much for your attention. I hope it was not too hard to listen to me. Thank you.